This is Nikki in Niagara coming to you from Niagara Falls, Canada. And today I am going to share with you my book haul. And these are reading books that I hauled this month. Small compared to the last few book hauls, which were rather large. No book outlet order this time to push the numbers up there. So let's get started. As always, I start with my Abominable Book Club books, and they are these three right here. So first one is Hex Experiments, a dark biotech anthology, edited by Keith Anthony Baird and Ross Jeffrey, a foreword by C.J. Tudor. So this is an anthology, as it says, of horror stories that have something to do with some kind of experiments. Most of them are scientific experiments in some shape or form, though there are other kinds of experiments involved. For example, one story is about a witch who is experimenting with black magic. So that's the kind of stuff that's in there, and I'm almost finished reading this. I just have a couple of stories left. You can see where my little bookmark is. Just a couple of stories left. So the next book is Sweetheart by Peter James. Now this is a reprint, I believe, of a previously published book, is it? Yes. No. 2018. Oh, yeah, it is a reprint, but it's not a new book. So this is Sweetheart by Peter James. Her past can't stay buried forever. Now, I've heard Peter James is a really good horror author. He's compared to the British Stephen King. So I've never read anything by him, so I'm excited to read this. Charlie has a strange feeling when she sees the idyllic mill house with its cluster of outbuildings, the lake, and the swirling mill stream. A powerful sense of recognition, as if she had been there before, except she knows she hasn't. After Charlie and her husband Tom move into Elmwood Mill, sinister memories start to haunt her. As the memories become increasingly vivid and terrifying, Charlie starts to feel afraid. Charlie is persuaded to undergo hypnosis, but in searching for the answer, she needs to go deep into her past, a place where secrets were safely buried. Until now. So yes. Oh, that's got very large print, a dark print in there. That'll be an easy read. And then the other one is a new edition, new release, I should say, The Apparition Phase by Will McLean. This, no, it's not either. It's 2020. I thought we always got a new book. Well, it doesn't matter. I've never read it or heard of it, and it sounds really good. The tag is Some Ghosts Never Leave Us. Twins Tim and Abby have always been different from their peers, spending their evenings in the attic of their parents' suburban house, poring over reports of the unexplained. Obsessed with photographs of ghostly apparitions, they decide to fake their own and use it to frighten a girl at school. But what was only supposed to be a harmless prank sets in motion a deadly and terrifying chain of events that neither of them could have predicted. So I like creepy kids, and I especially love creepy twins. I read a creepy twin book this month, or I should say in March. I read one which was really, really good. Ended up being my favorite book of the month. Okay, so now this one I know is a new release, and it is the Valincor Book of World Horror Stories, Volume 2, edited by James D. Jenkins and Ryan Cagle. So I have Volume 1, but I haven't read it yet. And this is international horror fiction from artists from all over the world. So there's artists from Brazil, Nigeria, Israel, Malta, Estonia, Greece, Puerto Rico, France, South Korea, Switzerland, and many more. That was half of them. So there's no theme to the book except that it's international horror. It says, making it essential reading for anyone interested in horror fiction or contemporary world literature. So, looks good, but I'll be reading Volume 1 first before I read Volume 2. Then I got myself a book that I have never read, but is definitely a must read for me, is the Practical Magic series. So I picked up the first book in the series. I have not seen the movie, so this is all going to be new for me. And I have heard that this is the book that people like the least of all 4 books. So with that in mind, I'm looking forward to reading it. Now, just in case you've never heard of Practical Magic, I will read the summary on the back here. The Owen sisters confront the challenges of life and love in this bewitching novel. For more than 200 years, the Owens women have been blamed for everything that has gone wrong in their Massachusetts town. Jillian and Sally have endured that fate as well. As children, the sisters were forever outsiders, taunted, talked about, pointed at. Their elderly aunts almost seemed to encourage the whispers of witchery, with their musty house and their exotic concoctions and their crowd of black cats. But all Jillian and Sally wanted was to escape. One will do so by marrying, the other by running away. But the bonds they share will bring them back, almost as if by magic. Yeah, very looking forward to starting this series of books, of 4 books, I believe. Now another recently released book from Valincor's International Stories, reprintings, and this is The Lake of the Dead by Andre Björk, I guess. And this was originally printed in its Norwegian in 1942, and this is the first English edition in February of 2022. So it says, a 1942 classic that has been voted Norway's all-time best thriller, a brilliant mix of mystery and the supernatural. That's the tagline. Deep in the darkest part of the Norwegian woods stands Dead Man's Cabin, where 110 years ago a madman slew his sister and her lover, throwing their decapitated corpses in a nearby lake before drowning himself to join them in death. Ever since, the cabin has been cursed, and anyone who spends the night there is possessed by the killer's spirit and infected with his madness. Jorn Werner, a young scholar from Oslo, ignored the old superstitions and bought the cabin as a place to read and work in quiet. Now he has disappeared, and the evidence suggests he threw himself in the lake in a fit of insanity. The police write it off as a suicide, but those who knew him are not so sure. Could the curse actually be real? Bjorn's sister and 5 of his friends travel to the cabin to look into his death, but not all of them will return alive from their stay at the Lake of the Dead. Ooh. Now, I found out about this book, and I absolutely had to get it. This book is by the wife of a man who was my doctor growing up as a child. It's an immigrant's story. They were, I think she's a South African, and the husband the doctor was Indian. So I'll just read you a little bit of the back here. Growing up European in 1930s and 40s South Africa, Joan leads a privileged life, though marred by family tragedy. After she escapes her Victorian grandmother's repressive upbringing to study midwifery, She comes face to face with the racial inequalities of her homeland when she falls in love with Biz, a handsome young Indian doctor. Increasingly dangerous harassment and oppression forced the couple to escape South Africa for London and finally small town Canada, where Biz can run his medical practice and live as he wishes. And that's where I come in. That small town is Fergus, Ontario, where I grew up. A heartbreaking, unique, and elegantly written perspective on life under apartheid. A Chameleon from the Land of Quagga offers a deeply moving love story and a fascinating glimpse at history. This is an inspirational depiction of the life and indefatigable spirit of a woman who continually reinvents herself to conquer the challenges life throws at her, no matter where she is or how dark and difficult the times. Now, she wrote this book when she was 90 years old. Let's see, I think it was published last month. No, 2019. A few years ago. Just found out about it. Now, part of the British Library, what is it called? Weird, Tales of the Weird. Oh, it's right on the front here. This is the British Library Tales of the Weird. So I've read one book in this series and it's absolutely excellent. This is the first and only book that contains novels rather than short stories. So this is called Haunted Houses, and it contains 2 novels by Charlotte Riddell, who is one of the an extremely successful Gothic writer from the late 1800s. One of the books was written in 1873 and the other in 1875. So an uninhabited house, Charlotte Riddell presents a curious proposition. How does one let a property when the tenants cannot stand their otherworldly lodger? Horror meets humor as a host of solicitors and clerks struggle to find the solution to their impending financial and perhaps mortal peril. Fairy Water follows young lovers navigating their new position in society, an effort frustrated by the interruptions of a spectral houseguest. Narrated by the couple's bombastic and disgruntled landlord, the economic obsessions and anxieties of late Victorian England are expertly and entertainingly laid bare. So kind of opposites of each other. One story is about the landlord who can't stand his ghostly lodger, and one is about the lodgers who can't stand their who are having problems with their landlord and their spectral house guest. Very nice books, excellent in the way that they look and they feel and they're made. This just came out in paperback, The Book of Accidents by Chuck Wendig. Wanted to read this for a while, but I wanted the paperback edition. So, long ago, Nathan lived in a house in the country with his abusive father and has never told his family what happened there. Long ago, Maddie was a little girl making dolls in her bedroom when she saw something she shouldn't have and is trying to remember that lost trauma by making haunting sculptures. Long ago, something sinister, something hungry, walked in the tunnels and the mountains and the coal mines of rural Pennsylvania. Now, Nate and Maddie Graves are married, and they have moved back to their hometown with their son Oliver. And now what happened long ago is happening again, and is happening to Oliver. He meets a strange boy who becomes his best friend, a boy with secrets of his own and a taste for dark magic. This dark magic puts them at the heart of a battle of good versus evil, and a fight for the soul of the family, and perhaps for all of the world. But the Graves family has a secret weapon in this battle, their love for one another. Sounds very good. Of course, all the books I get sound very good. So this one took a very long time to get to me. I had it as a pre-order, but then it never came. And Amazon kept telling me that, you know, they didn't have an estimated date yet. They didn't have an estimated date yet. And so finally I canceled my order and I ordered it off of Book Depository, and it got here within the week. So this is part of the Gothic Classics series produced by the Horror Writers Association, and it's called The Haunted Library of Horror Classics. So this is the second to last book. There's a new one that's out, and then there's a new one that's coming out this month. So we have The Castle of Otranto by Horace Walpole, which is considered to be the very first Gothic story novel ever written. And we have The Old English Baron by Clara Reeve, which is supposed to be an answer to The Castle of Otranto. And the introduction in this book is by Robert McCammon. Two Gothic tales of deception, spectral secrets, and the legacy of sin. The Castle of Otranto sits in the Italian countryside, a dark, hulking thing. It's been in Manfred's family for generations, and borne witness to both the triumph and shame of his forefathers. But Manfred lives in fear that the castle will one day slip from his grasp, and with it, the secrets hidden in its shadows. To keep what's his, Manfred extorts a young woman, Isabella, who finds herself ensconced in Otranto's ancient walls. Trapped and alone, she soon realizes she has more to fear than an old man's desperate plan. Something has awoken in Otranto and is seeking revenge for the sins of the past. Then also included in this edition is The Old English Baron, written according to its author, Clara Reeve, as the literary offspring of The Castle of Otranto, and is considered a major influence in the development of Gothic fiction. So, two books to go together very well. So, makes them both not quite so long stories. Then we get to some books that my book clubs are reading. So one of the book clubs that I'm in, I believe it's #horror in 24, is reading Flowers in the Attic by V.C. Andrews. This is a double edition, which has Flowers in the Attic and the sequel, Petals on the Wind, and then you can get a bind up of the next two books in the series, which were all written by V.C. Andrews. So we're going to be reading that, and I'm really looking forward to it because I have read it already, but that was back when I was like about 12 or 13, and I had no idea what incest was back then. I didn't understand what was going on. I loved the story. The twists and stuff must have excited me, but yeah, I didn't really understand that part of the story, so it's going to be interesting reading it again. So, in case you haven't heard of this, it is a very old book from the 80s, I believe, was when it was first written. Chris, Kathy, Corey, and Carrie had the perfect lives until a tragic accident changed everything. Now they are trapped in their grandparents' attic, waiting for Mama to figure out what to do next. As the days turn into weeks and the weeks into months, the unspeakable horrors that plague them are rivaled only by the sinful jealousies that begin to rise. That's a chunkster. And this, I believe, is going to be the May or June. I can't remember how far ahead we are in getting the books for the True Crime from the True #True Crime Book Club. So this is Hell's Half Acre, The Untold Story of the Benders, a Serial Killer Family on the American Frontier by Susan Jonasis. The Benders, I've been very interested in the Benders ever since I first heard of them and read a little story. The first time I heard of them was reading a graphic novel by Rick Geary. He did a series of Victorian horror, and he did this one of the the Benders. Now, I've taken a look through the book, and the only thing that bothers me is that there's no photographs of the Bender scene, and there are some. Like this is one. This is one of the scenes, except that the building, it doesn't have smoke coming out of it with the picture that's taken. But there are other ones of the site, and they're not here. So, I'll just read this middle one right here. The idea that a family of seemingly respectable homesteaders, one among the thousands relocating farther west in search of land and opportunity after the Civil War, were capable of operating a human slaughter pen appalled and fascinated the nation. The cabin on the prairie, traditionally a place for weary travelers to seek shelter and company, suddenly became something frightening and unknowable. In this suspense-filled tale of murder on the American frontier, Susan Jonases examines who the Benders really were, why they committed such a vicious killing spree, and whether justice ever caught up to them, a mystery that remains unsolved to this day. Drawing on extensive original archival material, Jonases introduces us to a fascinating cast of characters, many of whom have been previously missing from the story. Among them are the families of the victims, the hapless detectives who lost the trail, and the fugitives who helped the murderers escape. So, really excited to read this book. And finally, this month's book club read in hashtag I can't remember what it's called. I'll put it down here if I remember to. So, All Her Little Secrets by Wanda M. Morris. This is the last book I'm going to show you today. So this is something very different for me. I don't usually, it seems to be more of a mystery than a thriller, though it calls it a taut, sleek thriller. It's seeing here, it seems to be like a legal mystery type of story. And I never read legal stories, so this should be interesting for me to read. Ellis Littlejohn seemingly has it all. An Ivy League law degree, a well-paying job as a corporate attorney in Midtown Atlanta, great friends, and a for-fun relationship with a rich, charming executive who just happens to be her white boss. But everything changes one cold January morning when Elise arrives at the executive's suite and finds him dead with a gunshot to his head. And then she walks away like nothing has happened. Why? Ellis has been keeping a cache of dark secrets, including a small-town past and a kid brother who's spent time on the other side of the law. She can't be thrust into the spotlight again. But instead of grieving this tragedy, people are gossiping. The police are getting suspicious, and Elise, the company's lone black attorney, is promoted to replace her boss. Well, the opportunity is a dream come true. Elise just can't shake the feeling that something is off. When she uncovers shady dealings inside the company, Elise is trapped in an impossible ethical and moral dilemma. Suddenly, Elise's past and present lives collide as she launches into a pulse-pounding race to protect the brother she tried to save years ago and stop a conspiracy far more sinister than she could ever have imagined. So yes, that sounds really good. So interested to see what I think of it. Nice big words, so it's not going to take us a long time to read that. And there you have it, guys. Those are my new books. Thank you for allowing me to share them with you, and I hope that maybe you found something here that interests you, or perhaps that you have as well. Let me know down below which one of these books interests you, or which one of them you have read. So in the meantime, until next time, bye!